Hi there. So in the last video, I promised we'd be talking about doing some looping to be able to repeat code. Okay, so one of the first ways that we can do that in JavaScript and a lot of programming languages is with the while statement. Okay, we do a while loop. So how does this work? So while, we can write while and then test for a condition in a similar way that we were doing with the if conditions before, the if statements. And then we write our parentheses, and whatever, if this is evaluates to true, that means that we're going to keep executing whatever's between the parentheses here forever and ever until the condition is met. So it evaluates to true. Okay, so we have to make sure, as you can imagine, we have to make sure that at some stage it's going to be true. I mean false. So because when it's false, then we're going to leave the while loop. If it's always going to be true, then it's going to go on forever and ever and ever. Okay, and the application, our app is going to get stuck. It's going to get stuck in this while loop. So that's one of the things we have to be careful. Okay, let's do a simple example. So we can have have a count, and just so then we can do our while. So our count, while the count is less than 10. So while it's less than 10, we're going to print out we have done. So one of the things we can do is with strings, we can what they call concatenate strings, which is add with one string and another string, add them together into one string, one long string. We can use the plus sign in JavaScript. So we can say if we have done, we have done, and now we put the number, count, we have done loops. So that's going to be, the count is going to hold the number of loops we've done. And as we said, we've got to make sure that count actually has to reach the number 10. So we're going to increment. We have to make sure that every time we go around, count is going to go up. So we can write count equals count plus 1. Okay. Now I just close that parentheses and we can press enter to execute. There we go. Now we can see it goes around and it's printing out the value of count, and it does the 10 loops, then it finishes. Okay, so I want to show you another way of writing this. Count, when we're in, there's a shorthand for doing things. Often there's a shorthand when we're doing something that's very frequent. As we can often find in our language of use, our programming language, that it offers us a shorter way of writing it. So this can be written like this: count equals, instead of writing count equals count plus 1 and repeating count, we can write count plus equals 1. So count plus equals is the same as writing count equals count plus 1. Okay, and now we've got 11. So this enables us to write any number exact, and we could also do this with times. We could put a times, or we could do minus, and it would be the same as the minus would be count equals count minus 2. Okay, so if we put a 2, now we've got 13. So we can put any number. But as the most common use of this is just to increment by 1, just to add 1, there's even a shorter way of writing it. We can write count plus plus. So count plus plus is going to do exactly the same thing as count equals count plus 1. Okay? There we go. You can see it incrementing each time. Okay, so that's our while loop. There's another one it is actually a little bit safer in the sense that in the way you define the loop, it's going to be, it's supposed to, you have to necessarily, well, it's structured so that you define how things are changing and how things are incrementing with each loop. They're called for loops. Okay, these are very common in a lot of programming languages as well. So how do we write this? It's actually, when we define it, it has three parts. We have the first part is how we start off. The second part is the condition of what for us to maintain, keep going around. And the third part is the increment that we're going to be doing. Okay, so it has that very definite structure in it to make sure we're incrementing and we have clear right at the outset how everything works, how it's initialized, so there's only one step. We don't have to do as we did here. We're initializing a variable, then we're including a condition, and then somewhere we're incrementing. So while we don't have to use that, it can have any kind of condition, it can have any kind of way of determining when it has to exit. But the for loop, which covers a lot of cases, it gives us that kind of structure all in the same statement. So this would be, instead of count, well, I'll write counter. Okay, to change the, actually, look, I'll just clear this out, reload, get rid of that, and let's start again. Okay, so we'll write for. Now the count is a let because it changes its value, and we start off at 0, and now our condition is going to be count is less than 10, and we put as you can see, we're putting a semicolon in between each part. Count is less than 1, and then in each iteration we're going to increment, so we put count plus plus, which we know now that means count equals count plus 1. And then we can just have our one printout statement. We have done count loops. Okay, close. There we go. We've basically got the same result. Now that we're like count, we can put count plus 1, so it starts from 1, because as we're starting, we're initializing from 0. What's going on here? Count, what it's doing is, it's, instead of adding 1 to count, it's converting it to a string. So this is a kind of a funny problem that might seem very strange, but this has to do with the types, okay, of variable. So because count is a number, it's converting it to a string, and so it's adding one as though they were strings instead of numbers. I don't know if I'm explaining myself too well, but it'll be clear as much as you if you practice more. So I'm going to put it in, so it'll evaluate count plus 1 as a number first before adding it to the string, to the longer string, and now it works as expected. Okay, so there are the basic ideas, I think, for the looping that we wanted to do. There are other methods that we can use and other things for conditional statements, other ways of doing it, but these are the building blocks. I think they're the most important ones. So that'll be enough for us for now to go ahead and go on with our game, get some more logic, we have to get some more of these things working here. We had left it, where did we leave it? Here, we're going to go through all of the cells and set them to empty, and then we'll be able to go a lot further with what we've learnt so far in this episode. Okay, thanks very much. See you soon.